Hi, welcome once again to our YouTube channel. Thanks for subscribing to our channel. We really appreciate you. And in this particular series, we shall be treating past questions from the Jamb collection. So we'll be looking at a series of questions that have been asked by Jamb over the years, and we'll be giving well-detailed explanations to all of the questions as we come across them. I will implore you to try as much as possible to pay keen attention to all of the explanations that will be given in tackling all of the questions. I wish you success in your exam, and please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. Hi, welcome once again to our Jamb series. We shall be treating questions from the Jamb Biology Past Question year 2012. So that is where we are taking our question from for this particular series. So let us move straight into it. Now, these are the questions that we have. The number one question is the normal Jamb question. So we are skipping that. So we are moving straight to question 2. Now for question 2, we are given this diagram here. The instruction says, use the diagram below to answer question 2 and 3. And this is the diagram. It is a cell. It is a cell. We wouldn't be able to tell if it is an animal cell or a plant cell, but by the structure, it seems to be an animal cell because it is having just one membrane. Alright, so that is not the question. So question 2 there says the organelle responsible for heredity is labeled. We have Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4. This is what the Roman numeral 1 is pointing to. Roman numeral 2 is pointing to this. Roman numeral 3 is pointing to this, and Roman numeral 4 is pointing to this. So it is asking us to identify the organelle responsible for heredity. Now, when we look at every cell, we have the structure that is responsible for heredity being the nucleus, buried deep within a cell, buried deep within an organelle. So this is what the nucleus of the cell looks like. This one that I'm pointing at here is what the nucleus of the cell looks like. So that is going to be our answer for question 2. So Roman numeral 2 is our answer for the question. It is responsible for heredity, and so that is option B. So Jamb. So question 2 says heredity, responsible for heredity, and that is option B. So let's go to number 3. Number 3 there says the part labeled IV is the, from that diagram we have here, this is the IV. We can see the IV here, this one here. So this part here labeled IV, whenever you look at a cell and you see this kind of structure, this particular type of diagram of an organelle in a cell, that is a typical representation of the endoplasmic reticulum. That is how we draw or we depict the endoplasmic reticulum of a cell. So that is the answer to that particular question, IV. They said we should identify IV, the part labeled IV. So that is what it is, endoplasmic reticulum. So let us see if we have it in our option. Alright, option A says mitochondria, option B says cell wall, option C says endoplasmic reticulum, and option D there says nucleus. So our answer is option C, which is the endoplasmic reticulum. Option C, which is the endoplasmic reticulum. So before we go to number 4, we quickly need to understand some things here. Now, we have just made mention of a couple of organelles. Like we have these organelles, the options that we have here, mitochondrion, the cell wall, the endoplasmic reticulum, the nucleus. These are cell organelles and they all have their functions. For example, we have the mitochondrion. Let me just give us a short note for that. We have the mitochondrion. Mitochondrion is responsible for providing energy to the plant. So we call it the powerhouse. It is the powerhouse of a cell. It is the powerhouse of the cell. The second one there, the cell wall. So cell wall or cell membrane, depending on the kind of structure, they are responsible for separating the cell from the environment. Separation of cell components from the environment. That is basically what the cell wall is used for. And then we have the next one to be the endoplasmic reticulum. We have the ER, and we have two types of this ER. We have the smooth and the rough. It could be smooth and it could be rough. So we have the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Majorly their functions, we have their functions to be for protein synthesis. That is, they are responsible for the production of protein. Also for the storage of calcium storage. Also for lipid metabolism. So those are the functions of the ER. We have nucleus. All right, let's quickly see that of the nucleus. The nucleus, like we have said earlier on, is responsible for the hereditary material, houses the hereditary material. Yes, it houses the hereditary material. We have other types of cell organelle. Let me just list a couple of them. We have the ribosomes. They all have their functions. We have the lysosomes. Don't want to bore with too much notes. We have Golgi bodies. Golgi apparatus, and a whole lot of them like that. The vacuole is also there. So all of these are examples of the cell components that we can have, and the cell organelles that we can have. So let's move further now. Going to question 4. The question 4 there says, which of the following is most advanced in the evolutionary trend of animals? So we have option A, liver fluke, option B, earthworm, option C, snail, and option D, cockroach. Now I will leave us with this particular acronym that can help us memorize what the evolutionary trend of animals look like. Let me put it here for us because it is a bit long. So we have, let me just put it here, PC, let's see it that way, PCF. I put this, let's see, people can fly, then the ramek. People can fly ramek. Let's see, let's take ramek as an aircraft or something like that. That is, I'm just using that as an example of what to depict that particular acronym with. So people can fly. So what let's just go straight to what they all mean now. What they all mean. For P here, we have it to be the porifera. That is what we have the P as. And then for the C, we have it to be the colenterata. For the F, we have the F to be the flatworms. Their group name, we call them the platyhelminthes. And then for the R, we have the R to be the roundworms. And the A, the first A there, because we have two A's there. The first A there, we have it to be the annelids. So the annelids. Then the M here stands for the mollusca. The A, we have the A to be the arthropoda now. We have the E to be echinodermata. And then the C there stands for chordata. So when we look at the advanced evolutionary trend of organism, those that we have there happen to be the sequence. So we have the porifera, the coletorata, the flatworms, roundworms, and elida, the molluscas. We have the arthropoda, the echinodermata, as well as the chordata. So let us see where all of the organisms that we have in our option, let's see where they belong to. The first option that we have there, the liver fluke. The liver fluke here, like you can see, option A, liver fluke, option B, earthworm, option C, snail, and option D, the cockroach. So let us look at the organisms that we have there now. The first one, the liver fluke, we have the liver fluke to be, the liver fluke is a roundworm. So we have the liver fluke here, liver fluke. And then the second one we have there is earthworm. Earthworm is an annelida. Earthworm is an annelid, so we have it here, earthworm. And then the third one that we have, the option C, is snail. So snail is a mollusca. So this is where it belongs to, snail. Snail is a mollusca, so this is where it belongs to. And the fourth option that we have there, the cockroach. Cockroach is an example of an arthropoda. So this is where we have cockroach, the cockroach. So looking at it now, the one with the most, from the question there, the question says the one with the most advanced, the one that is most advanced in evolutionary trend in animal happens to be the one that is found at the base here, which is what? Cockroach. So option D for cockroach is our answer to that particular number 4 question. So let us put that down, option D. Option D. So let's go to number 5 now. Number 5 question there says, which of the following is the lowest category of classification? A, class, B, species, C, family, D, genus. When we look at levels of classification, these are the levels of classification that we have. Let me just put them here. We have the first one. There are 7 in number. We have them starting from K. We have the kingdom. Then the next one is we have the phylum or division. We have the class. We have the order. We have the family. We have the genus. And we have the species. So there are 7 in number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So which of them, the question is asking us for that, with the one that has the smallest classification, the one with the lowest classification of organism. So the one with the lowest classification here is going to be the species, because numerous species fall under the same genus, numerous genus fall under the same family, and so it keeps on growing like that. So the kingdom is the highest classification, while the species is the lowest classification. So that particular question there, we have species to be the answer, which is option B. Option B is the answer to number 5 question. Option B. And then number 6 there says, plants that show secondary growth are usually found among the A, the thallophytes, B, pteridophytes, C, monocotyledons, and D, the dicotyledons. Now looking at this particular question, we need to look at it holistically. Now we have plant growth, and there are 2 types of plant growth. We have the primary growth and then the secondary growth. But first and foremost, what is growth? Growth is the permanent, irreversible increase in the size, weight, length of an organism. So that is what growth is. So when we're looking at growth now in plants, we said there are of 2 types. We have the types of growth now. types. So we have two types. We have number one, we have the primary growth, and then number two, we have the secondary growth. So when we talk about the primary growth, we are talking about growth in the apical meristem. For the primary growth, it takes place in the apical meristem. Both of them takes place at the meristem, but for primary growth, it is in the apical meristem. And then for the secondary growth, we have it in lateral meristem. And this meristem here now, they are divided into two. We have the vascular cambium. Let me just put it here. Vascular cambium. That is the first one. And then the second one, we have the cork cambium. So those are the two types of growth. We have the primary and the secondary. And then the question is asking us specifically for secondary. It said plants that show secondary growth are usually found among the thallophytes, pteridophytes, the monocotyledons, and the dicotyledons. Now, of all these options, it is the dicots that actually possess the ability to carry out secondary growth, because secondary growth increases the stem thickness. It increases the size of the plant stem. So it is actually the dicots that we have as the answer of that particular question, which is option D. So going further now to question 7. Question 7 there says, the fungi are distinct group of eukaryotes mainly because they have A. Spores, B. No chlorophyll, C. Many fruiting bodies, and D. Sexual and asexual reproduction. I want to believe that is what option D is saying, sexual and asexual reproduction. Now, why will we say that fungi are eukaryotes? Why will we say, what is the distinguishing characteristic that makes fungi an eukaryote? That other things, that there are other characteristics that we can say, but why the fungi are distinct group of eukaryotes? Mainly because they have no. So which of these ones is it that they do not have that makes them an eukaryote? And the answer there is B, which is no chlorophyll. No chlorophyll, because if you look at the fungi, they are plant-like organisms that lack chlorophyll. Fungi are plant-like organisms that lack chlorophyll because they do not possess the chloroplast. They lack chlorophyll. Hence, they absorb food from dead organic matter. Hence, they absorb food from dead organic matter. So that is how they get their food. So if you look at it, I just went straight to making a pick of what the answer is. Why am I ruling out other options like the spores, many fruiting bodies, and sexual reproduction? This statement here is going to clarify that. Now, the fruiting bodies of the fungi. The fruiting bodies of the fungi contains spores, and these spores are responsible for dispersal, which are dispersed for reproduction. So if you look at these statements now, it is telling us that fungi actually has some fruiting bodies. Fungi here, it usually has some fruiting bodies, and these fruiting bodies contain spores. We can see that the fruiting bodies that we have here, they actually contain spores, and these spores are what they make use of for carrying out dispersal during their reproduction. So we can see that fungi here, the fungi that we have here is actually having spores. It possesses spores. It also has many fruiting bodies, as well as it carrying out reproduction. So the only thing that it does not have here is the chlorophyll. So that is going to be our answer. 7 is option B. And then we move to question 8. Question 8 there says, an arthropod that is destructive at early stage of its life is A. Butterfly, B. Mosquito, C. Bee, and D. The millipede. Now if we look at all of the organisms here, they all have complete metamorphosis. They all have complete metamorphosis, but a particular one amongst them have a type of larva that is destructive, and that is our option A, which happens to be the butterfly. So if we look at this picture here, we find out that this is the early stage of the life cycle of a butterfly. For example, we have eggs. We can see here that we have eggs. That's the eggs that the butterfly lays, and then from the eggs that are laid, it develops into the caterpillar. Now if you look at the leaf on which the eggs were being laid, which is the larval stage, it has matured to the stage of the larva, which is the caterpillar. The caterpillar is actually destroying the leaves. We can see the caterpillar eating up the leaves before it develops into the pupa stage and then back to the butterfly. So this is the life cycle of a butterfly. So the caterpillar here, which is the larval stage of the butterfly, is actually destructive. So that is where our answer there lies. Number 8 question, option A. And then we have number 9 question now. Number 9 question there says, an animal body that can be cut along its axis in any plane to give two identical parts is said to be A. Radially symmetrical, B. Bilaterally symmetrical, C. Asymmetrical, and D. Symmetrical. Now all of these options here, excluding the option C, is talking about symmetry. Now for radial, let me pick them one after the other. Actually our answer is option A, which is radially symmetrical. When you cut any animal body at a radially symmetrical point, passing through a particular axis on the body of that organism, any which way you cut it, you will be having two identical parts from any angle with which you cut it. In as much as it passed through that particular axis, you will be having a radially symmetrical object, because the two parts will be identical. So that is the answer to our question. But when we talk about bilateral symmetry, we're talking about cutting of an organism into two parts, two identical parts. That is just what bilaterally symmetrical is. It does not pass through that particular axis in one plane that we are talking in a particular plane that we are talking about. For radially symmetrical, in as much as you cut it across any plane, if you cut it in that axis across any plane, you will be having two identical parts of that organism. So that is the answer to our question. Asymmetrical is talking about cut that is not even giving us identical parts. So the answer to our question here is option A, which is radially symmetrical. Number 9 is option A. And then number 10. What is question 10 saying? Which of the following possesses mammary gland? Now the fact that we have the word mammary gland there tells us that the animal must be a mammal. So of our 4 options here, option A dogfish, B whale, C shark, and D catfish, it is only the whale that is a mammal, and so it is going to be only the whale that will have the mammary gland, and hence it produces milk to feed its young ones. Every other options here, dogfish, shark, and catfish, they are not mammals, so they do not have the mammary gland. So question 10 there is option B. So 11 now. The feature that links birds to reptiles in evolution is the possession of A. Feathers, B. Beak. I think that is supposed to be beak, not break. Then option C, skeleton. Option D, scales. Now if you look at the birds and the reptiles, they have something in common. It is not the feathers, because reptiles don't have feathers, And it is not the beak, because reptiles don't have beaks. It is only the birds that have feathers and beaks. It is not also the skeleton, because all organisms possess the skeleton. The only thing that brings them, or which happens to be an evolutionary trend in these two organisms, the birds and the reptiles, is the possession of scales, which helps them to regulate their body temperature. It is an adaptive feature that helps them to regulate their body temperature. So option D there is our answer, option D. So we move to number 12. Counter shading is an adaptive feature that enables animals to A. Fight enemies, B. Remain undetected, C. Warn enemies, and D. Attract mates. That is what our question there is talking about. When we talk about counter shading, it is actually an attribute that some organisms possess, and it is responsible for helping them to hide themselves from other animals. So let me put a short note here. Counter shading, actually we call it is a type of concealing coloration. Concealing coloration, in which the upper part of the body of the animal is darker in color compared to the underlying parts, or the unilluminate parts. Underlining or unilluminated part of the body of that animal. Hence, it helps them to evade capture, helping them to remain undetected. Hence, they evade capture. So that is what the counter shading is actually talking about. So if we look at our options there, the options we have fight enemies, remain undetected, warn enemies, as well as attract mates. So the answer to that question is option B. Is our answer to question 12. So we move to question 13 now. Question 13 says, which of the following plant structures lack a waterproof cuticle? Option A, leaf. Option B, stem. Option C, roots. And option D, shoot. So every other ones, they have waterproof cuticle, preventing water from gaining entrance into the body of the organism. So we have the leaf, the stem, as well as the shoot to have waterproof cuticles. They have waterproof cuticles, so they do not permit water to enter into the body of the organism. All of them have waterproof cuticle. It is only the root here that does not have waterproof cuticle. Only the root that does not have waterproof cuticle. So that is why water is able to enter into the plant through the root and then through the vascular bundles to the upper part of the plant. So the answer to our question there is option C. And then we move to question 14. Question 14 there says, in the mammalian male reproductive system, the part that serves as a passage for both urine and semen is A, the urethra, B, ureter, C, bladder, and then D, we have the seminal vesicle. Every option there carry out different functions. Like the ureter conducts urine from the kidney to the bladder We also have the bladder there. So the bladder is just a storage site. The bladder is a storage site for urine. And then we have the seminal vesicle, which is also a part responsible for sperm production. So the only option that we have there is the urethra, which is a tube-like structure running through the penis, to deliver sperms or semen and urine out of the body. So the urethra is our answer for this particular question. You can see it here, the urethra. So let us quickly put that down. A. Number 15 there says, in the plant, which of the following is required in minute quantities for growth? A. Copper, B. Potassium, C. Phosphorus, and D. Sodium. Now, if you look at all of these options here, we have some of them to be part of the commonest type of fertilizer that we use, which is the NPK. So when we look at the formula for NPK, you will discover that we have some of those substances that we have there as part of the components of NPK. And that is why plants are given that particular fertilizer, because they need it in large quantity. They need these particular materials in large quantity. So we have NPK, nitrogen, we have phosphorus, we have potassium. So we can see phosphorus and potassium as part of options that we have there. So they are actually required in large quantities. So phosphorus and potassium are out of the competition. So we have our answer left with copper and sodium. Sodium is also a material that is required by the plant in large quantity, because absence of sodium in the plant causes coloration of the leaves in the plant. So it results to stunted growth. So the answer of this question here is copper. Copper is required by plants in minute quantities. That is our answer to that question. Option A. That's the answer to question 15. So we'll move to question 16 now. Which of the following organisms is both parasitic and autotrophic? A. Sundew, B. Loranthus, C. Rhizopus, and D. Tapeworm. Now, if we look at this, when the question is talking about parasitic and autotrophic, let us quickly see what those two mean. What do we mean by parasitic? Parasites are organisms that live in or on another organism called the host. Parasites live and benefit from the association with the host while causing harm to it. The host does not benefit in this relationship Instead, it loses. That is what a parasite is. Parasites are organisms that go into relationship causing harm to their host. And we have different types of parasites. We have the endoparasites, the ones that live inside the host. Example, we have tapeworm, we have roundworm. Those are examples of endoparasites. And then the other one, we have the ectoparasites. Ectoparasites, those found outside the host. Example of these, we have tick, a tick on dogs. We have lice and others. So that is what the parasite are. Then the other one, we talk about autotrophs. Autotrophs are organisms. Autotrophs are organisms that can manufacture their food by themselves. And they are of two types. We have photosynthesis, and the second one is chemosynthesis. Photosynthesis, when the plants or the autotrophs, usually the green plants, when they absorb energy from the sun with the nutrient from the ground and the water from the ground to manufacture their food, while chemosynthesis is when they make use of chemicals. This one is using solar energy, while this one is using chemicals. So now we understand what parasites are and what autotrophs are. So if we pick our question very well now, we will discover that some of them are just parasites. They are not autotrophic because they cannot manufacture their food by themselves. Example, tapeworm cannot manufacture its own food by itself, so it is basically a parasite because it is found in the gut of man. Then rhizopus lives on another organism, so it could be said to be an autotroph because it is actually some of their plants, so they can manufacture their food by themselves. But if we look at this sundew here, sundew is a plant, quite alright, so it should be autotrophic, but is it actually parasitic? It is not parasitic because it is a carnivore. Because it feeds on other organisms. It feeds on insects. The sundew is a carnivorous plant, so it is not parasitic in nature. The answer to that question is going to be the loranthus, because the loranthus is actually autotrophic and also parasitic in nature. So that is our answer to that particular question, option B. And then moving to 17 now. Question 17 there says, a function of the hydrochloric acid produced in the human stomach during digestion is to A. Neutralize the effect of bile, B. Coagulate milk protein and emulsify fat, C. Stop the action of ptyalin, and D. Break up food into smaller particles. Now, let's answer the question. Neutralizing the effect of bile is not the action of the or the function of the HCl. Why? Because the first thing that happens to the food when the food gets into the stomach is actually the action of the HCl, which helps to actually change the form of the substance that we have coming from the mouth. Because so for some of the enzymes to act on the food needs to be in acidic medium. So that is why we have the HCl there. So it is not to neutralize the action of the bile. Also, it is not to coagulate milk protein and to emulsify fat, because emulsification of fat here is the function of the bile, and then coagulation of milk here is the function of another enzyme which is called the renin. Renin helps to curdle or to coagulate milk. Now, going to D here, break up food into smaller particles. In fact, the food must have been broken into smaller particles right from when it was in the mouth. So the answer to this question number 17 here is option C, which is to stop the action of thiolin. The HCl in the stomach helps to stop the action of thiolin because thiolin has acted on carbohydrate food in the mouth, helping it to convert the starch to maltose. So the action of that thiolin in the mouth needs to be nullified so that other pancreatic enzymes, particularly for carbohydrates, which is going to be the amylases, can actually come into play. So that is the answer to that question. The answer to question 17, which is the function of hydrochloric acid, is to stop the action of thiolin. Option C. So number 18 now. Which of the following is a polysaccharide? A. Glucose, B. Sucrose, C. Maltose, and D. Cellulose. Those are the options that we have. If we look at this question now, they are all carbohydrates, but it's looking for the polysaccharide amongst them. We have three types of sugar. We have the monosaccharide, we have the disaccharide, and we have the polysaccharide. So examples of the monosaccharide, we have glucose. Glucose is an example, is a major example of the monosaccharide. So we have glucose here. Now from our option, we have two other type of substances there. We have the sucrose and the maltose. Those are disaccharides because we have more than one sugar there. The meaning of the saccharide there is talking about the saccharide there means sugar. So for monosaccharide, it has just one sugar, which is glucose. For disaccharide, we have example of sucrose, which is actually plus we have fructose, glucose plus fructose. That is an example of a disaccharide. We also have another one which is maltose, which is actually glucose plus glucose. So those are examples of disaccharides. Let me underline them so we understand what you are saying. Sucrose is a disaccharide. We also have maltose as another example of a disaccharide. So those are the examples that we have for disaccharides, particularly from our question, this as well as this. Now for the polysaccharide from our question, there's only one example there, and that is the cellulose. So it is only cellulose that is the polysaccharide that we have in this question, and that is option D. Okay, we have this. It said use the diagram below to answer this question 19 and 20. So the diagram we have, this is the diagram that we have. Now if we look at this particular diagram, we will see that this plant here, it has arrows. This is one arrow going down. You can see the arrow facing downward here, and this one here, this is another arrow facing up here. You can see it. You can see this arrow here pointing downwards, and this one is another arrow pointing upwards here, and here we have another arrow here, arrow from the outside going to the leaf, and here we have another arrow from the leaf going outside. So we are going to make use of this to answer question 19 and 20. Question 19 says arrows represent directional movement of materials. Transportation in xylem is represented by. Now the xylem is an example of a vascular tissue in the plant. Vascular tissues in plants, and we have them majorly to be two. We have the first one to be the xylem and the second one to be the phloem. The xylem and the phloem. What is the xylem used for? Xylem is used to transport or for the translocation of water from the roots to the stems and leaves. To the stems and the leaves. While the phloem, which is the second vascular tissue, helps to transport nutrients from the leaves to storage organs or sites. So those are the two vascular tissues that we have. So this particular one here, from what we just said now, the arrow that represents the transportation in xylem is represented by, now xylem moves from the root. It transports water from the roots to the upper part of the plant. So this is it here in the Roman numeral 4. We have it in this one here. That is where we have it. This particular one here. The arrow that is going upwards from the roots to the upper part of the plant is Roman numeral 4. So that is our answer to that particular question, which is option D. So question 19 is option D. Question 20 there says the arrow labeled 2 represents the A, release of oxygen, B, intake of carbon dioxide, C, movement of photosynthesis, and D, movement of nutrients. Let us see what the arrow that labels 2. Arrow that labels 2. Okay, this is the arrow that labels 2. Now it is moving from the plant. If you look at it very well, it is moving from the plant leaf to surrounding of the plant. Moving from the plant leaf to the surrounding of the plant. Now this is actually talking about respiration. This is talking about respiration. It is through the plant stomata, that is stomata and lenticel, that the plant actually carries out gaseous exchange. So the plant is taking in carbon dioxide in Roman numeral 3, but it is releasing to the surrounding in this Roman numeral 4 here, which is actually release of oxygen. So that is particularly what the answer is to question 20. Arrow label 2 represents the release of oxygen that is being used by the animals. So that is option A. So 21 now, one says in the kidney of mammals, the site of ultrafiltration is the A, the uniferous tubule, B, the Bowman's capsule, C, we have the loops of Henle, and D, the renal tubule. If we look at this question now, we're talking about function of the kidney generally. So in which part of it do we have the site of ultrafiltration? That is particularly what that question there is talking about. Now if we look at the function of this part of the kidney, if you look at their function, trying to find out the site of ultrafiltration, we find out that it is actually the Bowman's capsule. In the Bowman's capsule is where we have the site of ultrafiltration. If we look at the uniferous tubule, like the first option is saying here, let's see what happens in the uniferous tubule. It helps to filter the blood. It filters the blood to separate the liquid, which is the water, from the blood. To separate out water. That is basically what the uriniferous tubule does. And then we have the loop of Henle, or Henle's loop. In this part here, we have the reabsorption of water and sodium chloride from the filtrate. Reabsorption of water and sodium chloride from the filtrate. That is basically what happens in the loop of Henle. And then we have the renal tubule as well. The renal tubule. We have so many numerous renal tubules. They are tubules found in the kidney, and their function is to return nutrients, fluids, substances that are already filtered out of the urine, out of the blood, back into the blood. So they help to filter out. They help to return nutrients that have been filtered out. that have been filtered out of the blood back into the body. So that is basically what these body parts, what they do. So the only one that is responsible for actually carrying out ultrafiltration is the Bowman's capsule. The Bowman's capsule carries out ultrafiltration. So that is the answer to our question, and that is option B for question 21. So question 22 now says, which of the following is involved in secondary thickening in plants? Now this is more like a question that we answered some minutes ago. Now the answer to that particular question is option C. It is not option A or B, nor is it D. It is option C, because in secondary thickening we said we have two types. If we look at our notes, we talked about the types of secondary growth, and we said we have secondary growth which takes place in the lateral meristem. Now it is of two types. We have the vascular cambium as well as the cork cambium. So those are the answers to that particular question that is asked in question 22, vascular cambium and cork cambium. So number 22 is option C. So 23 there says, an example of a fruit that develops from a single carpel is A. Okra, B. Tomato, C. Bean, and D. Orange. Now if we want to understand this question, we need to understand what this statement here means, single carpel. When we talk about single carpel, we're talking about monocarpous gynoecian plants. Monocarpous gynoecian plants. They have single cell carpels, have single carpel, and it has only one stigma, which has only one stigma, ovary, and style. That is what the monocarpous gynoecian plants are. And we have examples to be the peaches. We have the peaches as examples, and most legumes. Now legumes are plants that produce their fruits or their seeds in pods. So example of a legume, we have bean. Bean produces its own seed in pod. So bean is the major answer that we have here, not okra, tomato, nor is it orange. It is bean. Question 23 is option C. So for question 24 now, this is the question. So we need to see this image here. So use this diagram to answer the question. Use this diagram here to answer the question. So this is showing the female reproductive part. This particular diagram is showing the female reproductive part. So we are using this diagram to answer the next questions. The developing embryo is usually contained in the part labeled Roman figure 4, Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 1. So that is the question 24. So we are looking for the part that is responsible for containing the embryo. Let us look at the diagram again. This is the diagram. Now the part that houses the embryo, the developing embryo, is this part here. And that is usually the part that is called the uterus or the womb. So it is Roman numeral 2. This place here, the Roman numeral 2, is the part that is responsible for housing the developing fetus or embryo. So that is our answer, option C. So that is the answer to that question, option C. And then 25 there says, The function of the part labeled 3 is to A. Produce egg cells, B. Protect sperms during fertilization, C. Secrete hormones during coitus, and then D. Protect the developing embryo. If we look at that diagram again, we will find out that the part that is labeled 3 is this. The part that is labeled 3, we can see it here. This is the part that is labeled 3. So looking at this part here now, it is showing us, or it is pointing at an egg-like structure. So that is the ovary. That is the ovary, the site of production of egg cell. So that is basically what that thing does. It produces egg cells. So if we quickly look at the 4 points that we have here, Roman numeral 1 is pointing to this place here. This place here is called the fallopian tube. I'm just quickly digressing a bit. This place is called the fallopian tube. That is where the egg cell goes to lie in wait here. Mature egg cell lies in wait here for the sperm cell to come through this route here and to come here to fertilize the egg cell. If there is successful fertilization, the egg cell, which is now fertilized, so it becomes fertilized egg cell, it comes into this place here, which is called the uterus. It is coming here to stay in the uterine lining, looking for a place of attachment to find itself affixed to the wall of the uterus, or we call it the uterine lining. And this place here is the cervix, through which the sperm passes through into the womb. So basically that is what this diagram here depicts. So the part that is labeled 3 is actually the part that produces the egg cell. 25, option A. So we move to 26 now. Plant growth can be artificially stimulated by the action or addition of A. Gibberellin, B. Quinine, C. Abscisic acid, and D. Ethylene. Now, these are all plant hormones. They are all plant hormones and they have different functions. So let us quickly look at their functions, starting with gibberellin. Gibberellin, as an example of a plant hormone, it is responsible for plant growth. It is responsible for plant growth as well as organ development. As well as organ development. That is the function of the gibberellin. We have another one which is the quinine, cytokinin. So its own function is for cell division and enlargement. It's responsible for cell division and enlargement. Cell division, cell enlargement, and then it helps in shoot initiation. Also helps in shoot initiation. So it initiates the action of the shoot. So shoot initiation. Those are the functions of the quinine. And we have the next one to be the abscisic acid. The abscisic acid. Its own function is to promote seed dormancy. It promotes seed dormancy. That is its own major function. Also, it is responsible for adaptive responses. And adaptive responses. So those are the function of the abscisic acid. And then the last one there, which is the ethylene. Ethylene is responsible for regulation and stimulation of the opening and closing of the fruits and ripening. It is responsible for regulation of the plant body. It regulates and stimulates opening of flowers, and then it is also responsible for fruit ripening as well as fruit ripening, and then wilting, which is dropping of leaves. So those are the function of the ethylene. So having understood all of these functions now, it makes our answer to be easy. So plant growth is stimulated artificially by the addition of gibberellin. The addition of gibberellin is the answer to our question, which is option A, 26. And then we move to question 27. The autonomic nervous system consists of neurons that control the A. We have voluntary muscles, B. Heartbeat, C. Tongue, and D. Hands. Now, when we look at this particular topic, it is taken from the nervous system. So when we look at nervous system, this is what we are going to be having. The nervous system looks like this, so we'll just briefly draw a little chart for it. Nervous system. Now, the nervous system is divided into multiple parts. We have it looking like this. Let me just depict it this way. So from here, we have it to look this way. From nervous system, we have it to be the central nervous system. Let me just write the acronym. Central nervous system, and then the peripheral nervous system. So the central nervous system is further divided into two. We have it to be the brain and the spinal cord. Brain and then spinal cord. So that is what the central nervous system is made up of. Now when we look at the PNS is also divided into two. We have it divided into two, where we have it divided into two, like we will see now. We have the ANS, which is the autonomic nervous system. ANS, autonomic or autonomous nervous system. And then the second one is SNS, which is somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system. Now the somatic nervous system is also divided into two. And now this division consists of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system and then parasympathetic nervous system. So that is basically the system of classification of the nervous system. So the question we are being asked is from the ANS, and so it is asking us, autonomic nervous system consists of neurons that control the A. voluntary muscles, B. heartbeat, C. tongue, and D. hands. Now let's just go straight to the point. If we look at the options that we have here, voluntary muscles, the tongue, and the hands, we have the ability to coordinate them by ourselves, so they are not coordinated involuntarily. Every other muscle here, they are controlled by an individual. Talking about the voluntary muscles, the ability for you to move from a place to another or to carry out a particular type of movement is as a result of the fact that the individual has taken or made the will to actually carry out that action. And then the tongue also, ability to roll the tongue or to use the tongue to do whatever you want to use it to do. And then the movement of the hands, those are actions that are made voluntarily. The only one that is not controlled voluntarily is the heartbeat, and that is the one that we have as the neurons that is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. So the heartbeat is actually the autonomic nervous system's function. So that is the answer to our question 27. 27 is option B. So we'll go to question 28 now. Plants of temperate origin can be grown in tropical areas in vegetation zones of A. forest zone, B. Guinea savanna, C. Sudan savanna, and D. mountain savanna. When we look at this particular question here, we see that the temperate regions are polar regions. When we look at the temperate regions, they are polar regions. So plants that are grown in the temperate regions, those are plants that are specifically adapted to extreme cold or extreme heat. Such organisms, they said that they can be grown in tropical areas. Those are places that have moderate temperature. They do not have extreme cold or extreme heat. And so in which of these zones can we have such? So we have rainforest, we have Guinea savanna, we have Sudan savanna, and we have mountain savanna. The rainforest is in the southern part of the temperate zone. So also is the savanna. The rainforest is towards the we call it the southern zone or southern pole, and then the Sudan savanna is towards the northern pole. We also have the mountain forest, which is towards the southern pole as well. The only one that is found in the middle, where we have a temperate tropical region rather, is the Guinea savanna. The one that is found in an environment that has moderate amount of rainfall and sunshine is the Guinea savanna. So that is our answer. Option B is the answer to question 28. And then we move to 29. Water cycle is maintained mainly by A. Evaporation of water in the environment. B. Evaporation and condensation of water in the environment. C. Condensation of water in the environment. And D. Transpiration and respiration in plants. Now, talking about water cycle, we are talking about how water is being recycled, how water is being cycled in the atmosphere or in the environment. Now, it talks about the use up of water and then the replenishment of water. That is basically what water cycle is talking about. So let us look at the processes that we have here. When we talk about evaporation, evaporation is the process whereby water is being taken away from the liquid state to the gaseous state. And so it is not, that is option A. It's just talking about how water is being taken away into the gaseous form. So that is just talking about taking away of water or taking up of water. It is not talking about how water is being brought back. Option B here is talking about evaporation and condensation. Evaporation here is talking about the release of water to the gaseous form, and then condensation, how the gaseous form of water is being converted back to water. Condensation, the gaseous form or the steam, the vapor, water vapor is being converted back to liquid form. So that is option B. And then we have option C, just talking about the gaseous form of water being converted to liquid form. And then transpiration here in option D, transpiration and respiration. Respiration does not necessarily bring about, well, little water will be formed, but that is not necessarily how the water is being recycled. So the major answer here is evaporation and condensation. So that is our answer, option B. And then question 30. Question 30 says, organisms living in an estuarine habitat are adapted to A. Withstand wide fluctuations in temperature. B. Survive only in water with low salinity. C. Withstand wide fluctuations in salinity. And then D. Option D there says feed only on phytoplanktons and dead organic matter. To explain this particular question now, we need to understand what this estuarine habitat here is talking about. Now, we have different water bodies, so let us start with that. The water bodies are divided into two. Water bodies, they are divided into two. We have the fresh water, and then we have the salt water. Those are the two water bodies that we have, basically divided into two. But we now have a third condition in which we have a mixture of these two. Fresh water is just a water that does not have salt content, and then salt water has high amount of salt in them. So those are the characteristics of the two waters. And now we have another one which is called estuarine. Estuarine / brackish water. Brackish water. Now, the estuarine habitat, what do we mean by estuarine? estuarine or brackish water is a water body that is a mixture of both the fresh water, and salt water. That is basically what estuarine habitat is talking about. So it is a mixture of fresh water and salt water. So we now have two different conditions in this particular estuarine habitat. One, we have a condition where we have high amount of fresh water plus low amount of salt water. Let me put it this way: high fresh water plus low salt water, and that condition will give us what we refer to as low salinity. A condition whereby the amount of salt in that environment is low because there is low amount of salt water in the mixture. And then the second condition is where we have low amount of fresh water and high amount of salt water. In this one here, we are having, let me depict it this way: low amount of fresh water plus high amount of salt water. In this condition here, we will be having high salinity because we find out that the amount of the salt water is more than the amount of the fresh water. So the salinity in that environment is going to be high. So basically that is what estuarine habitat is talking about. So from that now we should be able to deduce our answer. The answer there, organisms living in an estuarine habitat will be able to withstand, that is where the answer is, option C, withstand wide fluctuations in the salinity, because there is going to be constant fluctuation in the salt content of that water. So that is our answer, question number 30. Alright, question 31 now. The presence of slit roots, pneumatophores, sunken stomata, and salt glands are adaptive features of plants found in the A. Tropical rainforest, B. Mangrove swamp, C. Grassland, and D. Montane forest. Now, all of these characteristics that we have here are the characteristics of plants that are found in a particular environment. Now, looking at having slit roots, pneumatophores, tells us that the plants there will be found in a water environment because it has salt glands here. If the plant has salt gland, it means there is going to be salt concentration in the environment of the plant. Now, all of these other characteristics here may not really give us the clue of what the answer could be like, but looking at the salt gland here tells us that it is a swamp. Now, all of the following here, there is only one swamp that we have, or one water body. Tropical rainforest is a water body, but it does not have plants having salt gland because the water there is not salty. And then the other two here, grassland and montane, they are forests or grasslands. Plants there do not really have salt glands because the water there are not salty. The only one that we have salt concentration, or probably an estuarine, is the mangrove swamp, and that is where our answer to that question lies. That is option B. Option B is the answer to our 31st question. So question 32 now. Which of the following animals can exist solely on water that they get from food and metabolic reactions? Option A, forest arboreal dwellers. Option B, desert dwellers. Option C, forest ground dwellers. And option D, rainforest dwellers. Now looking at all of these organisms here, a particular set of the organisms will not be able to get water from any other source apart from the food they eat and then the metabolic reactions in the body. Metabolic reactions talking about the aftermath of digestion, respiration and all of those. So forest arboreal dwellers are organisms that are found in the forest and on the treetops, particularly birds. So we have some birds in that environment, and such birds can even fly to water bodies. We have forest ground dwellers. They are places in the forest where there will be streams and rivers, so they may be able to get water from that environment. And so we also have rainforests. The only ones that will not be able to get water from any other source apart from the food they eat as well as metabolic reactions is the desert dwellers. The desert dwellers, they find themselves in an environment that is deficient of water, and so since there is no water in the environment, the only place they will get water is going to be from the food they eat and then from metabolic reaction. So that is option B, 32. Option B. Then question 33 now. The most likely first colonizers of a bare rock are A. Mosses, B. Ferns, C. Lichen, and option D there we have fungi. Now looking at this now, we have moss as the first option and then ferns as the second option. Those are not actually classified as colonizers because they are not first set of organisms that can be found in an environment. They survive after some other organisms have colonized an environment. This particular topic is coming from what we refer to as ecological succession. So we're actually looking at organisms that are able to start a particular colonization or a particular colony, and in such we are looking at the primary colonizers. So the primary colonizers here, we will be having the fungi. I could have said lichen, but we will discover that even the lichens we have lichen to be, we have lichens to be mixture of algae and fungi, so they cohabitate. Algae cohabitating with fungi. Algae cohabitating with fungi is what gives us lichen. So fungi would have stayed there for some time, then carrying out a particular type of relationship, and that is what brings about lichen. So I'll pick our answer there to be option D for that particular question 33. Option D. And then question 34 says the carrying capacity of a habitat is reached when the population growth begins to A. increase slowly, B. increase exponentially, C. slow down, and D. remain steady. When we look at this now, we find out that the carrying capacity of a particular environment will stop increasing when it has reached its maximum capacity, and we will have the growth beginning to slow down. Growth will no longer be as fast as it was before. So we have the growth of that particular environment, the carrying capacity of the habitat will start to slow down. It will no longer, it will gradually reduce from the number that it used to be. Let's assume it was increasing by 100%. By the time it gets to the carriage limit, it is going to be having insignificant growth. So the growth will slow down, and that is the answer. Question 34 is option C. So we'll move to question 35. The abiotic factors that control human population include A. disease and famine, B. space and rainfall, C. flooding and earthquake, then D. temperature and diseases. Now it has been discovered that humans have a very high tolerating capacity or capability. As such, we are able to withstand a whole lot of these disasters, diseases, famine, even space and rainfall. Let's look at diseases now. Diseases and famine. Because we do not necessarily have famine in some environments, people tend to stay there. So diseases can actually be a factor that can control the population, but farming will not do that at that particular point. Then space and rainfall is not really a determinant to that. We have temperature and diseases as well, which may not be able to actually have an effect on the population size. But when there is flood and earthquake can actually incapacitate the population of an environment. So that is our answer to question 35, flooding and earthquake. Flooding will definitely displace people from their environment or from their habitat, from their homes. So also earthquake. So those are the answers. Option C is the answer to question 35. Option C. And then we have 36. An indigenous method of renewing and maintaining soil fertility is by A. Clearing farms by burning, B. Planting one crop type, C. Adding inorganic fertilizers yearly, and then option D there says crop rotation and shifting cultivation. Now when we look at this particular question, it is asking us for indigenous farming practice. You can see it, indigenous there, meaning that we are talking about olden or ancient farming practice. So clearing farms by burning will definitely kill soil fertility because it will kill off the microbes in the soil, so that will not be our answer. Then planting one crop type will definitely not lead to soil fertility because the point will come where the soil will no longer be fertile for that particular crop because it would have used up the nutrients to actually carry out the germination of that particular crop type. And then C there says adding inorganic fertilizers yearly. Now this is not an indigenous system because adding fertilizers is a modern way of improving the fertility of the soil. The answer to our question is crop rotation and shifting cultivation. When you rotate crops on a piece of land and then you carry out shifting cultivation, plants will definitely be able to put some nutrients in the soil for another species of crops to actually make use of. So carrying out shifting cultivation and crop rotation helps to replenish these lost nutrients that are in the soil. So that is the answer to that particular question, option D. So we have question 37 now. The disease caused by waterborne pathogens include A. Gonorrhea and poliomyelitis, B. Typhoid and syphilis, C. Tuberculosis and cholera, and D. Typhoid and cholera. Gonorrhea is an STD, so it is not caused by water. It is not a waterborne disease. Even poliomyelitis is not a waterborne disease. Then we have typhoid. Yes, typhoid can be seen as a waterborne disease, but definitely not syphilis, which is an STD. It's a sexually transmitted disease or infection. And then we have tuberculosis and cholera. Tuberculosis is a respiratory disease. It is not necessarily transmitted by waterborne pathogens, even if cholera is. And then we have the last one there to be option D. Option D says typhoid and cholera. Yes, those are the answers to our question. That is where our answer lies. And then we move to question 38. Question 38 is asking us to study this diagram here. Use the diagram below to answer question 38 and 39. Now we have a diagram showing the height of cassava in meters and then the frequency. So the question 38 says the graph illustrates this graph that we have here. They are telling us that if we should give it a name. So what name will we give to that graph? The graph illustrates the highest frequency of height of 2 meters, a discontinuously varying character, a continuously varying character, and option D, total yield in cassava farm. Now it is not showing only the frequency for height of 2 meters. That is not the only information we can get from here. And if you look at B, it is not a discontinuously varying character because you can see it transiting from one end to another. So it is not necessarily a discontinuous varying character because it is not discontinuous variation. And then option D here says total yield in a cassava farm. Well, we can use this to get the total yield in a cassava farm, but actually it illustrates a continuously varying character. That is what we can see here. It is not showing the yield because what we have there is height of cassava in meters, not the amount of cassava that is being harvested. So it is not option D. So the answer is option C. It is a continuously varying character. So option C. And then we have question 39. The largest number of cassava plants has an approximate height of. If you look at that particular chart that we got here now, this peak here, we have it to have the highest height here, and that is about 1.6. So that is 1.6. So that is our answer. 1.6 is the answer to question 39. 39 is option B. And then we move to question 40. Which of the following is true in blood transfusion? A. Person of blood group AB can donate blood only to another person of blood group AB. Yeah, that is absolutely true. AB has antigen A and antigen B, because those are the characteristics of the blood group AB. So it can only transfer blood to somebody that has AB. It cannot transfer to A because A has antigen A and it is against B. And because AB has antigen B, then A blood group will not be able to collect the blood from AB because of the antibody that it has, which is anti-B antibody. So also B will not be able to collect blood from AB because B has anti-A antibody, which AB here has the antigen. AB here has antigen A, so B will not be able to collect the blood from AB because B has anti-A antibody. As such, it will not be able to collect blood from AB because AB has the antigen A and antigen B. B blood group is against A, and so it will not be able to get the blood from AB. And then option B says persons of blood group A and B can donate or receive blood from one another. That is absolutely wrong. It is not possible for persons of blood group A to get blood from B or vice versa. And then C says a person of blood group AB can receive blood from persons from blood group A or B. A person of blood group AB can receive blood only from persons. Now that is where the clause here lies. The word only there is not making that particular statement correct. It's true that AB blood group can actually get their blood from somebody that has the blood group A or blood group B, but it is not only from them that they can get their blood. AB can also get their blood from AB also. So the word only here nullifies this option C. It is not only from blood group A or blood group B that AB can get their blood. And then option D says a person of blood group O can donate only to a person of blood group O. That is not true. Blood group O is a universal donor, so it can donate blood to any of the existing groups. So the right answer that we have here is option A, which says person of blood group A can donate blood only to another person of blood group AB. Option A. Going to question 41 now. A yellow maize is planted and all the fruits obtained are of yellow seeds. When they are crossbred, yellow seeds and white seeds are obtained in a ratio 3:1. The yellow seed is said to be. Now, in such a particular trait, when the yellow seeds keep appearing generation after generation, it is only telling us that the yellow seed is a dominant trait. So that is the answer. We have two types of traits. We have the dominant trait, which is the trait that is always expressed in a particular gene, and then we have the recessive trait, the one that is not expressed because the dominant trait overshadows or masks the recessive trait. So the recessive trait is there in the gene, but it is not outwardly expressed. It is only the dominant trait that is outwardly expressed. So that is the answer to this particular 41st question. Dominant trait. D is our answer. And then question 42 says, when a color-blind man marries a carrier woman, what is the probability of their offspring being color-blind? If we have the color-blind, homozygous color-blind, the person is having double C, and then the wife is a carrier. The wife is not really color blind person. It is only the husband that is color blind. The wife is just a carrier. So we have the traits to look like this. So this is how we have the cross looking. We have the cross looking like this. So for this one, we have it to be capital C, capital C. We also have this one here to look like this. And for this one here, we have it to be capital C, small c. And then we have the next one. The next one is looking like this. We have it to be capital C again. And then the last one there is going to look like this. And so this one is also going to be capital C, small c. So we have the capital C to be ratio 2, and then capital C, small c is also 2. So that makes it ratio 2 to 2. And so when we look at this ratio, it makes it 50% possibility. So that is the answer to that particular question. The probability of their offspring being colorblind is going to be 50%. Option B. And then we have the 43rd question there. The correct base pairing for DNA is A. Adenine to thymine and guanine to cytosine. B. Adenine to guanine and thymine to cytosine. C. Adenine to cytosine and guanine to thymine. And then we have option D to be adenine to adenine and cytosine to cytosine. Now when we look at this, the base pairs of DNA and RNA, let's quickly see what the base pairs look like. DNA has its base pairs to be adenine, we have thymine, adenine, thymine, we have the cytosine as well as the guanine. Those are the base pairs of the DNA. While for RNA, we have it to be adenine, uracil, cytosine, and guanine. So that is the base pair. So we always have this relationship between them, adenine connecting with thymine and then cytosine connecting with guanine. For the RNA, adenine connects with uracil and then cytosine connects with guanine again. So the answer to our question there for the DNA pair is adenine to thymine, then cytosine to guanine. That's the answer to our question. So we have it to be option A, adenine to thymine and guanine to cytosine. Option A. And then 44. Okay, let us look at this diagram here because we are using this diagram to answer the question. Now, it tells us from the diagram here, we are having it says number of organisms here, and then we have P chordatum here as well as P chordatum here, then time days. So we can see that the both of them are coming from the same spot here, and then P chordatum is going up here, and then this one here is coming down here. If we look at it now, we find out that since they are both the same species, Paramecium chordatum, then they are both the same species. So such reaction or interaction is referred to as an intraspecific association. Is referred to as intraspecific association when it is between organisms of the same species. We have it to be intraspecific association. So that is the answer to this particular question here, intraspecific association. So that is option B for that question. option B. But we could have another scenario where this particular thing here is different. Let's assume we have it to be P. Aurelia. Now, if that is what we are having there, instead of the P chordatum that we are having there, instead of this P chordatum, let's assume we have it to be P. Aurelia. It is still organisms of the same genus. It is still Plasmodium. This one is Plasmodium. The P there is Plasmodium, while this one also is Plasmodium. So it is Plasmodium Aurelia for this one, and then this one is Plasmodium chordatum. Now, they are organisms of the same genus, but not organisms of the same species. So since they are not organisms of the same species in this particular one now, it is going to be interspecific competition. Interspecific competition, because they are organisms of different species. I just have to say that. So I think this particular question is supposed to be P. Aurelia here, like I've just written here now, because the next question, which is question 45, we have answered question 45 talking about it as though it is the P chordatum that was there. But if we are taking the P. Aurelia as the substance that is supposed to be here, species that is supposed to be here, that is what fits the next question that we are about to answer, which is question 45. Question 45 now is telling us, it says, which of the following statements is true of the interaction? The interaction we are talking about is this interaction here. So have it at the back of our minds that this one here is P, this one here is P. Aurelia, and this one is P. chordatum. So that is what we are having here. So we have option A, P. Aurelia is better adapted for obtaining food than P. chordatum. Option B then says P. chordatum is better adapted for obtaining food than P. Aurelia. Option C says both organisms cannot coexist, and option D says both organisms cannot reproduce. Now, it is not that the organisms cannot reproduce. If they cannot reproduce, then the organisms should have gone into extinction. So that is not the answer to that question. So let us stick to options A to C. Now, P. Aurelia is better adapted for obtaining food. They did not tell us which one is adapted to obtaining food in this diagram here. They didn't tell us, specify which one is adapted to obtaining food or which one is not adapted to obtaining food. But the information we can see here is that, considering that this one is P. Aurelia, we have it that they both come out from the same source. If they are both coming from the same source and P. Aurelia is going up, number of organisms is increasing, while for the number of organisms of P. chordatum, the number is reducing per time. It means that these two organisms are not organisms that can coexist. Both of them cannot coexist. They survive in different environments. So that is the answer to that question 45, option C. And then we move to question 46. The short thick beak, please, this is beak, not break. The short thick beak in birds is an adaptation for crushing seeds, sucking nectar, tearing flesh, and then straining mud. Now, organisms that crush seeds have short, strong beaks. They have short, thick beaks that helps them to crack nuts. So that is basically the answer to this question, because option B there says sucking nectar. Birds that suck nectar or that feed on nectar, they always have long, thin beaks that will help them to pierce into the petals of the flower. And then the ones that have tearing flesh, the ones that are able to tear flesh, their beaks are short and curved. So this one here is not short and curved, it's short and thick, so it is adapted for crushing seeds. The one that is used for straining mud, like that of the ducks or the pelicans, such birds have long, flat beaks. So that is not the type of beak we are talking about here. The type of beak we are talking about here is the short, thick beak that is used for crushing seeds or cracking nuts. That is option A. Option A. And then we have 47. The basking of agama lizards in the sun is to A. change the color of their body, B. raise their body temperature to become active, C. fight to defend their territories, and D. attract the female for courtship. Now, basking of agama lizard in the sun, they are trying to absorb radial energy, trying to absorb solar energy onto their skin. Remember that agama lizards are reptiles, and all reptiles are poikilothermic organisms. It said that lizards are poikilothermic organisms, and this means that they are cold-blooded. They are cold-blooded animals. We have other type of animals which are warm-blooded. For warm-blooded animals, we have them to be homoeothermic organisms. These are warm-blooded animals. For the cold-blooded animals, we have the reptiles, we have the Pisces. Those are the examples. Reptiles, as well as the Pisces, the fishes. And then for the warm-blooded, we have the mammals, we have the apes, etc. So for this particular organism that we're talking about, the agama lizards, they are cold-blooded, so they lie in the sun, basking the sun, because they need to regulate their body temperature. That is basically the reason why they find themselves in the sun. Now, during that process, there's a possibility of them actually portraying bright coloration in their head, and that is actually an adaptive feature that helps them to attract females for courtship. But the actual reason for basking in the sun is to regulate their body temperature, to raise their body temperature to become active. So that is option B. And then we have question 48. The significance of a very large number of termites involved in nuptial swarming is to. Please, we need to understand something here. They said the significance of the large number, that is the keyword there, large number. We need to understand that it is not just that the termites are flying out, but they are flying out in large number. That is the keyword there. So understanding that now tells us that option A, it provides birds with plenty of food. B, ensures their perpetuation despite predatory pressure. Option C says search for a favorable place, and a favorable place to breed, and option D says ensure that every individual gets a mate. Those are the options that we have in that particular question. Now, the answer to that question is that they are swarming in large number. Yes, the actual reason for swarming or nuptial swarming is to bring about the process of actually searching for favorable place to breed. That is basically what it means. That is why they are swarming out of their territory or their termitarium. But the reason why they swarm in large number is to ensure their presence despite predatory pressure. When they swarm out in few number, there is a possibility of them being preyed upon by organisms like the birds. So when they swarm out in large number, there is a possibility of some of these swarming insects or termites escaping into a particular territory where they will no longer be hunted by the birds or whatever. So that is the answer to that question. They swarm in large number to ensure their perpetuation despite predatory pressure, to ensure their survival despite predatory pressures. Option B is the answer to question 48. And then we have question 49. The use and disuse of body parts and the inheritance of acquired traits were used to explain Darwin's theory, Lamarck's theory, genetic drift, and gene flow. Now, those were the theories that were postulated by Lamarck before Darwin came into the picture. So he was the one that started the theory of use and disuse of body part as well as inheritance of acquired traits when we talk about evolution. So it is the theory of Lamarck that actually brought about the use and disuse of body parts as well as the inheritance of acquired traits. And this is the one that was accepted. Use and disuse of body parts was actually accepted, while the inheritance of acquired traits was disproved because Lamarck could not explain it beyond reasonable doubt. So option B is our answer to question 49. Option B. And there we have the 50th question, which is the last question. From his study of Galapagos finches, Darwin derived his theory of evolution from A. Comparative anatomy, B. Comparative physiology, C. Fossil remains, and D. Comparative embryology. Now, talking about Galapagos finches, the study is talking about the beaks, different types of beaks of this particular genus of birds. So it is just talking about the differences in the structure of their beaks. That is basically what it is talking about. So it is not anatomy because it is not internal body parts that is being studied. It is not fossil remains because the birds in question were not dead when the study was being made, and it is not comparative embryology because the organisms were already hatched when the study was being carried out. So the answer is comparative physiology, talking about the physical structure of the organism. The different types of beaks of these Galapagos finches were studied, and that was what this study of evolution, theory of evolution of Darwin, is about. So from his study of Galapagos finches, Darwin derived his theory of evolution from comparative physiology. Option B is our answer to question 50. So now we have come to the end of our Jamb biology question and answer 2012. So I will plead with us to try as much as possible to go through all that has been said, try to understand the explanations that have been given in answering each of the questions that we have come across today. I will encourage us to try as much as possible to practice more questions, and this will give you better grounds to be able to answer questions, particularly when you have familiarized yourselves with the answers that have been given. So this is as far as we can come. So don't forget to like our content, share them, and please, we believe you are getting better, you are getting good representation from all that we are doing, so we would like to hear from you. So don't forget to drop your comments in the comment section. And perhaps you have not subscribed to our channel, please don't fail to do so. Subscribe to our channel and then click on the notification button so you will get easily notified when else we drop our subsequent uploads. Don't forget, watch out for the next episode of the Biology Jam series. Thank you very much and wish you success in your exams. Bye for now.